Thank you very much for the presentation, all three of you. Far be it from me to be a little bit apprehensive about the whole thing. We are the playground of New Zealand, no doubt about that, with the activity centre and all the things. We've got activities here like the Northern Crossing. If we get the Cycle Challenge, if we get the Cycling Centre of Excellence, it'd be a one-off. The big risk I see in this is that we could have the ice cube here, and then it could be duplicated, rather like we had the motorsport park here and it was duplicated in Hampton Down. Do you see this as a huge risk, or I mean it must be there?
I think it is. I think it probably is there. But in saying that, a lot of typically ice rinks are privately held, so it's a business, and there's been talk over the last few years about somebody having a crack at one in Okuni and somebody looking at something in Rotorua, and as soon as they've heard about the Taupo venture and the model which we're looking to run with, which is along the lines of this PPP, which means it's a charitable organisation, it's not there to make money, so it's providing a service, a community service. They drop these private individuals have dropped their ideas because they can't. I mean, they're trying to make a buck, and we're trying to provide a service to the communities. It's quite a different thing. So that gives us a little bit of confidence. But no, the risk is still there. Yeah,
we're
for sure.
I mean,
the same risk.
Trying to say it must be there.
I guess the same risk is around, investing in the Ironman or something like that. We could lose that in a couple of years' time.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean we shouldn't necessarily consider it and have a crack. We sort of see the ice cube as filling a really important gap in not only in our events, because it opens up a huge number of different event opportunities that we can have, but it's also indoors, and anybody with families would know that there's very little to do indoors in Taupo, particularly during our winter months. We're fantastic outdoor recreation opportunities, but very few indoor, and this we think it's just crying out.
The other value you've got, it is a multi-purpose facility.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mia. I was just going to follow on to that. Well, you'd probably think second thoughts if another one was to be built somewhere else, would it not? Say if Tauranga were in before yous, before the trust was set up, and you heard that there was a project going on there, would it not affect you straight away?
We would certainly need to look at the have to factor that into a feasibility analysis, definitely. Auckland, bearing in mind Auckland's got 3 at the moment, and they're all running profitably as private ventures. So it's hard to say right straight away whether or not it would be a deal breaker or not if there was one down the road, but we'd certainly look at it.
Are they the only 3 in the North Island?
That's it.
Yeah, Jenny, the financing of it, so how far down the road, much progress you've made, or are we the next link before we can move on forward?
Yes, I haven't actually been formally engaged yet. Well, have I, Rob?
Take you out for dinner.
We get to know each other.
No, so we haven't started any formal approaches yet. I've had a look round and I've done a very high level fundraising strategy where I've said, this is where I think you can get your money from, this is what I think the mix would look like for this particular project, and I've given it to the trust. But in order to these are 2 things that need to happen. One is that it's really difficult to get the seed funding. That's the problem for any project. The hardest part is getting the first bit of money. Once you get the first bit of money, the other money tends to flow in, but it's getting the first bit of money in, because often central government won't commit if the local authority's not committing. In fact, they very rarely would, unless the local authority was committing in whatever way that may be. And also corporates would say, well, hang on a minute, what's the local authority putting in and what's their commitment to the project? Because they would look at it and say, well, if the council endorses a project and thinks it's very good and we've either put money in it or given land or done a mix of that, then they would see that the council has confidence in the project going ahead and supports it. So that's how that tends to work. So first bit would be to get the seed funding in. And the second thing that needs to happen before we can really get too far down the track is to get a detailed feasibility study done. I mean, that's really important. The questions that you've been asking here this afternoon, they would be the questions if we were talking to lotteries and saying, look, we want 2.5 million or 3 million from your significant projects fund, they'd be saying to me or to Rob, or how many people are going to use it, what are your operational costs going to be like, how environmentally sustainable is it going to be, da 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 da. So that would be the next thing we needed to do, is to get that feasibility study done so we can answer those questions either to the council or to corporates,
so
government.
Jenny, from what Eric was saying, the land is part of a commitment, the operational costs another commitment you're looking to council to forward to as well? Is it a totally different issue?
Not at this stage, no. We, like I say, without doing the detailed feasibility, we can't quantify it, but we are confident that operationally that it stands on its own, definitely.
I think the trust has to be careful. I guess what I would say is that if it doesn't stack up operationally, it's got to stack up operationally. You can't keep going back to the same people for funding, because I think if you ask them for some funding to build it, that's kind of it, and then you need to make sure that it works when you're running it yourself. I think you can't keep coming back to the council, you can't keep going back to your corporates. It needs to be able to be viable in its own right, otherwise it's not worth doing. And so that information would fall out of a feasibility study.
Okay, thanks, G. Councillor Downard, then.
Yeah, just with the timing, I appreciate it. I support it, but then, with us knowing the cycling of excellence being, I think that's in February or end of February, we know, or
April.
March. Does that time, sit in there that, say if we do get it, then it's not going to, we're not going to double up on work that's been done now in between then to then suddenly fall into this.
Yeah, we need to make sure that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves with where we're sitting whilst the cycling centre's still out there.
Yeah, so just to follow on from this, Mayor, what do you want us out of this apart from the suggested resolution, the trust? They're coming here today. Is there a certain...
I was going to wait till the question sort of went out of that, and we'll get to there just in a minute. So if you just put that aside for a minute, and I'll come over to Councillor Henderson.
I might be preempting that, but I was going to ask two questions. How much do you need for the feasibility study, and what other sources potentially of funding for that feasibility study are there in terms of the...
Okay, there's a potential to get money from lotteries for a feasibility study. How much you could get, I would be guessing, but possibly around sort of 7,000 or something around about 5 to 7,000 potentially from lotteries. I'd have to double check and come back to you. To do a feasibility study probably costs around about somewhere between 15 and 20,000 to do. That's a detailed one with a whole lot of operational projections and finance associated with it.
Okay, well, as has been pointed out, Councillor Williams?
Oh, just one out of curiosity, you said you would be considering going to Contact Energy with regard to the energy requirements for the ice making. So does that mean you'll be using geothermal energy? Or the geothermal energy, will that have some advantage in applying to government funding, or sort of an environmental?
Yeah.
And I guess the second part of the question is, will that be a lot more cost effective? Because I do know that some ice rinks, I think it was Wellington, one of them fell over because the huge energy cost was crippling.
Absolutely. The first part of your question, in terms of the energy source, Using waste geothermal energy just ticks all the boxes in terms of sustainability. It's be a great example nationally and even internationally of that sort of technology, and I think it would be hugely valuable in terms of attracting central government monies, but also corporates, because they want to be associated with something like that.
It's a point of difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Point of difference.
And the second part of your question is the biggest cost in running an ice rink is power. It is expensive. It's very expensive to keep that ice frozen, and also to heat. So we would see this as being a major saving in operational costs. Be huge.
Okay, well, it's a really great, I think it's a really great concept. I mean, it's yet to be proven through feasibility studies and what have you, but on the face of it, it's a really, really great concept. Hockey, curling, ice climbing, figure skating, business house hockey, ice skate racing. They race them. I've seen them on overseas sky channels and things like that. And the 10-pin bowling alley, which I know in itself would make money, and this town's been crying out for that sort of thing for quite some time. That's the baying I've heard in the public. So we have got a suggested resolution here, as Councillor Downard has said. However, just to receive information appears to me, and I think to my fellow councillors around the table, to be great, but, and how are we going to get this feasibility study done?
Can I make a
Yes,
suggestion?
please.
I'm sure that our staff will be prepared to come back at the January meeting with a bit more of a proposal wrapped around that, in terms of in terms of considering the information we received from the presentation.
Okay, I'm a little bit deaf. I think what Councillor McCall.
Howie.
This will be a fundraiser.
I'm sure what Ms McLeod actually just said was you're coming to report back to the January meeting. Is that what you just said?
I just suggested that,
with
yep.
a suggested resolution as to how to go forward with this feasibility.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so that being the case, Councillor Hickling?
I just wonder, Mayor Rick, because we have a totally new council, whether perhaps we should reconfirm our agreement with the Alpine Trust regarding the leasing of land to them.
It's a
That's
good
all.
point, but I'll just...
I don't know what I can't remember what the original resolution said.
The original resolution's here on the agenda item.
But to give them some
In late
continuous support.
In late 2010, the TKMP committee resolved to lease a portion of land to the Alpine Sports Trust. So you're saying we should
Well, no,
reimburse that?
if that resolution says it until we receive that resolution, that's fine. Yeah. I wasn't quite sure what we originally said. Yeah.
So what we'll do is I'll call for a move and a second to as the resolution, suggested resolution here says, is that the information be received, because we're now being informed by extremely capable staff that it's going to be an agenda item for the January meeting as to moving another step forward. So we can leave it at that, and I'll ask for Councillor Hickling so moved, and a second, Councillor Williams. All in favour? Information be received. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you very, very much for the work you've put in, and even to you, Jenny. I know I don't know whether you're engaged or not. I do know my mate there's married, but so yeah, no. And again, I'm only reiterating what I said before. A lot of people, passionate people in this district, put a lot of time and effort into things free of charge, and you've done that, and I commend you for that on behalf of my fellow councillors, and hope that we can move this further forward. So we'll see you at